I, 34F, moved into my current home about 8 months ago after my divorce. It's a modest 3-bedroom house in what I thought was a quiet suburban neighborhood. The homes are fairly close together, but there's good privacy with fenced yards and mature trees. I work from home as a medical transcriptionist, which means I keep odd hours sometimes. My next-door neighbor, let's call him Dennis, mid-40s, seemed normal enough when I first moved in. He lives alone, keeps his property neat, and initially was polite but distant. He told me he worked as a security consultant, which often required him to work from home at odd hours. I didn't think much of it at the time. People have all kinds of jobs these days. The first incident happened about 2 months after I moved in. I was awakened around 3:15 a.m. by what sounded like scratching at my back door. When I turned on the lights and checked, nobody was there, but I noticed some marks on the doorframe that hadn't been there before. I dismissed it as possibly raccoons or some other wildlife. A week later, it happened again. This time, I distinctly heard the doorknob being jiggled. I called out, "Hello?" and the noise immediately stopped. I called the non-emergency police line, but by the time an officer arrived 40 minutes later, there was nothing to see. The officer suggested it might be attempted burglary and recommended motion sensor lights. I installed the lights the next day, and for about 3 weeks, nothing happened. Then one night, the motion lights triggered, and I heard a much more aggressive attempt at the door. This time it sounded like someone was using a tool to try to force the lock. I called 911, but again, whoever it was had disappeared before police arrived. The officers found scratch marks around my lock, but no other evidence. That's when I decided to install a hidden camera above my back door. It was small, motion-activated, and had night vision capability. I also reinforced my doors with additional deadbolts and installed window locks on all ground floor windows. My brother came over and helped me set everything up, telling me I was being paranoid, but humoring me anyway. The fourth attempt came just 2 nights later. This time, the camera captured clear footage of Dennis, my neighbor, wearing what looked like surgical gloves and using some kind of lockpicking tools on my door. He was wearing dark clothing and had a strange, intense expression on his face. The most disturbing part was that he was whispering something to himself the entire time. I couldn't make out what he was saying, but the camera picked up his voice, a low, rhythmic muttering that made the hair on my arm stand up. I took the footage to the police immediately. They said they would speak with Dennis, but explained they couldn't arrest him just for attempting to pick a lock without proof of criminal intent. They suggested I get a restraining order and document any further incidents. Officer Martinez seemed genuinely concerned, but explained the limitations they face legally. We'll talk to him, but without more evidence of what he's planning to do once inside, our hands are tied, she said. Make sure you're documenting everything and call us immediately if he returns. I spent the next day in a fog of anxiety, jumping at every sound. I called my sister, who suggested I come stay with her, but I was reluctant to leave my home unattended. What if he broke in while I was gone and set up something inside? The thought made me sick. Before I could even file the paperwork for a restraining order, attempt number 5 happened. This time, Dennis came with a small pry bar. The footage showed him working methodically at my door for nearly 15 minutes before my motion lights seemed to startle him, and he retreated. His behavior was even more disturbing. He kept stopping to press his ear against my door, and at one point, he actually licked the doorknob. I was terrified. The footage also captured something I had noticed during previous attempts. Dennis was wearing some kind of pendant around his neck that he kept touching between attempts at the lock. It looked old and possibly made of bone. When he thought he heard something, he would clutch it and whisper to it before continuing. I'll update when I can. I'm taking this new footage to the police tomorrow morning. I've barely slept, and I've barricaded myself in my bedroom with a dresser against the door. I've also ordered a taser and pepper spray online with rush delivery. Update 2 days later. Thank you all for your concern and advice. I took the new footage to the police, who agreed the behavior was concerning but still claimed they needed more to make an arrest. Officer Martinez was off duty, but her colleague Officer Reyes reviewed the footage with his sergeant. This is definitely escalating behavior, the sergeant told me. We're going to increase patrols in your neighborhood, but I strongly advise you to stay elsewhere for a few nights. They promised to have an officer drive by my house every hour during the night shift. They also said they would speak with Dennis again, but warned me not to confront him myself under any circumstances. I went to stay with my sister, but left my camera running. I also set up a second hidden camera inside my living room, just in case he actually managed to get in. My sister lives about 30 minutes away, and I spent the whole drive looking in my rearview mirror, terrified I was being followed. That night, I barely slept despite being at my sister's house. I kept checking the live feed from my cameras on my phone. Around 2:40 a.m., movement triggered the outdoor camera. The 6th attempt was happening, and it's where things got truly nightmarish. The camera caught Dennis returning, this time carrying a duffel bag. He worked on the lock for a while, then pulled something out of the bag that made my blood run cold. A medical kit with syringes and several vials of clear liquid. He also had restraints and what looked like surgical tools, all while wearing a disturbing expression that I can only describe as hungry anticipation. What disturbed me most was how he kept checking his watch, as if timing something. He would try the lock for exactly 2 minutes, then stop and check his watch. Wait exactly 30 seconds, then try again. It was methodical and practiced. At one point, he pulled out a small notebook and consulted it before selecting a different tool from his bag. The pendant I'd noticed before was now more visible. It appeared to be a yellowed, carved figurine of some kind that he would occasionally press to his lips. I immediately called the police and told them to meet me at my house. I woke my sister, and she drove me there while I stayed on the phone with dispatch. By the time we arrived, 3 police cars were at my house, but Dennis was gone. I showed them the footage on my phone, and their reactions told me everything I needed to know. They were visibly shaken by what they saw. One officer actually had to step outside for a moment. "We have enough for a warrant now," Officer Martinez said, having been called in when the report came through. "The syringes and restraints show clear intent." They told me they would be obtaining a search warrant for Dennis's home immediately and advised me to stay away from my house for at least another day while they processed everything. They stationed an officer outside my house for the remainder of the night. I returned to my sister's, too wired and terrified to sleep. I kept checking the camera feed obsessively. Around dawn, I finally fell into an exhausted sleep on my sister's couch. Update, 3 days later. The police obtained their search warrant the day after the 6th attempt, but Dennis wasn't home when they went to execute it. They maintained surveillance on his house, waiting for him to return, while keeping an officer near my property as well. Despite the police presence, Dennis made his 7th attempt just 2 nights after the 6th. The officer assigned to my street had been called away to assist with an accident a few blocks over, leaving a brief window of time when my house was unwatched. Dennis, who must have been observing the police patterns, seized this opportunity. The camera caught him approaching my back door, this time with a small power drill. The footage showed him drilling into my door frame with practiced precision. What made this footage particularly chilling was his complete calm and the methodical way he worked, like someone who had done this many times before. He was wearing what looked like scrubs under his dark jacket and had a surgical mask hanging around his neck. The pendant was prominently displayed over his clothes now, and he would occasionally stop to whisper to it. The drill made quick work of my door frame, and for the first time, he actually managed to compromise the lock. Just as he was about to open the door, headlights swept across my yard, the patrol officer returning. Dennis melted away into the shadows with practiced ease, taking his tools with him. The officer noticed the damaged door frame during his check of the property and immediately called for backup. They reviewed my camera footage on the spot and launched an immediate search for Dennis. This time, they found him at his home, apparently in the process of packing his car to flee. When they executed their search warrant, what they found was beyond anyone's worst nightmare. His basement contained a makeshift medical room with restraints, surgical equipment, and detailed journals describing his procedures on what appeared to be at least 5 previous victims in other cities. There were photographs, trophies, including jewelry and small personal items, and detailed plans for what he intended to do to me. The most disturbing discovery was a hidden room behind a false wall in his basement. Inside were hundreds of bone fragments, carefully labeled with dates going back nearly 15 years. The pendant he wore appeared to be made from one of these bones, carved into a crude figurine. The detective later told me that in his 22 years on the force, he had never seen anything so meticulously planned and disturbing. They found evidence linking Dennis to 3 unsolved disappearances in neighboring states. His journals revealed he had been watching me for weeks before I even moved in, having somehow learned the house would be sold. Detective Wilson told me he had a type. Women living alone, usually after a major life change like divorce or job relocation. People who might not have established strong local connections yet. The journals contained detailed information about my daily routine, when I slept, when I showered, even what I ate. He had been observing me through my windows using a high-powered spotting scope from his attic. The level of detail was sickening. The police have been incredibly supportive, connecting me with victim services and keeping me updated on the investigation. They believe Dennis may have been operating for over a decade, moving between states to avoid detection. Update, 6 weeks later. Dennis is now in custody facing multiple charges including attempted kidnapping, stalking, attempted breaking and entering, and murder charges are pending as authorities investigate the disappearances connected to him. The prosecutor believes he will never see freedom again. The forensic team has been working to identify the bone fragments found in his home. So far, they've confirmed they belong to at least 7 different individuals. The FBI has become involved, and they're cross-referencing missing persons cases from multiple states. I've learned more about Dennis's background. His claim of being a security consultant was completely fabricated. He was briefly enrolled in medical school before being dismissed for ethical concerns that were never fully documented. He then worked as an orderly at several hospitals, always leaving just before questions about missing medications or patient complaints could be addressed. His journals contained detailed surgical plans for each victim, including me. The prosecutor allowed me to know that Dennis believed he was harvesting essence from his victims through elaborate procedures that I can't bring myself to describe. The pendant was apparently what he considered a power object made from his first victim. I'm in intensive therapy now and planning to sell my house as soon as possible. My therapist specializes in trauma and has been helping me process not only the fear but the violation of knowing someone was watching me in what should have been my safe space. I've learned that Dennis specifically targeted me because as a work-from-home divorcee, I fit his victim profile, someone whose disappearance might not be immediately noticed for days. The detective told me my security measures and quick reporting likely saved my life. Final update, 2 months later. I'm posting this final update from my sister's guest room, where I've been living while my house is on the market. There's been significant interest in the case, and I've been approached by several true crime podcasts and journalists. I've declined all interviews, focusing instead on rebuilding my sense of safety. Dennis's case is proceeding through the legal system. He was denied bail, and the prosecutor is seeking maximum penalties on all charges. His attorney initially suggested an insanity defense, but after psychological evaluation, Dennis was found competent to stand trial. The journals made it clear he knew exactly what he was doing and took elaborate precautions to avoid capture. The FBI has now linked him to 9 disappearances across 4 states. Families of missing women have finally received answers, though the closure comes with unimaginable grief. I've been in contact with some of them through a victim support group, and their strength inspires me daily. My house sold quickly, despite disclosure requirements about what happened. I'm using part of the proceeds to fund a longer-term stay in a secured apartment building while I figure out my next steps. I'm considering relocating to another state entirely, somewhere I can make a fresh start. I still can't sleep through the night. Every noise makes me jump. I check locks multiple times and have cameras everywhere. My therapist says these are normal responses to trauma and that healing isn't linear. Some days are better than others. Officer Martinez checks in on me weekly, going above and beyond her professional duties. She's become something of a friend through this ordeal, and her support means everything. I'm sharing this story as a warning. Trust your instincts, take security seriously, and document everything. If I hadn't installed that camera, I might have become another missing person case that never got solved. The small investment in home security saved my life. To those who suggested I was overreacting after the first few incidents, I understand the skepticism. Before this happened to me, I might have thought the same. But predators count on our tendency to doubt ourselves and our reluctance to make a scene. Sometimes making a scene is exactly what saves you. I don't know what my future holds, but I'm determined not to let Dennis take anything more from me than he already has. Each day I work to reclaim my sense of safety and autonomy. It's a slow process, but I'm getting there one step at a time. Thank you all for your support throughout this nightmare. It has meant more than you know. Edit. Thank you for all the awards and kind comments. To those asking for the footage, I can't share it as it's evidence in an ongoing investigation. And no, I won't be doing interviews or podcasts about this, at least not anytime soon. I'm focusing on healing right now.